Okay, hey, this will be fun. So, this is my first attempt to do Instagram and YouTube live at the same time. So, I'll probably be making eye contact with no one. Anyway, I'm glad you could join me. So, this program is about the disc styles, and disc is fairly widely used in corporate America and by trainers. It's easily understood. It's easy to give. It's also easy to not use correctly or effectively. Sometimes it's treated as an answer to everything. I just realized I don't have my YouTube live mic on up front. So, hey, the thrill of trying to do two different programs. So I guess I'm doing two programs poorly instead of one well. Anyway, so we're talking about disc and the different styles. And so one of the cautionary things is that disc is part of an overall picture. So in job satisfaction, we look at temperament, aptitudes or natural abilities, values, and interests. And so if you were to just use DISC as the sole instrument in whether you're looking for yourself to figure out what your purpose is, or if you are an employer trying to evaluate employees, a mistake is to use just DISC. You're getting one look through the window of temperament, and you are it's basically there are pretty much three instruments. Two are very similar. DISC and the Big Five are very similar, and the Big Five is much more academic and not really used in business. And then the Myers-Briggs typology is the other one. And so in my practice, I use DISC, I use Myers-Briggs, and then I also use aptitude testing. And that gets me the natural abilities and the temperament aspect of those four job satisfiers. And then the rest of the work is interactive between clients and myself as far as interests and values. So my purpose tonight is to just give you a quick overview of what DISC entails and what it means. So each letter stands for something. D is for dominance. I is for influence. S is for steadiness, sometimes steadfastness. And then C is for conscientiousness. So high D individuals are, decisive. Let me make clear too. So when we talk about dominance, we're talking about how someone goes after tasks or problems or issues. This is not inherently someone who wants to dominate other people. This is someone who wants to solve problems and dominate problems and not just let them go along. So a high D person's decisive, likes control, dislikes inaction, prefers maximum freedom to manage himself and others, kind of cool, independent. Excuse me, I got to reach up here and clear something. Okay. Low tolerance for feelings, can oftentimes so again, I'm talking in extremes, like we're pretending that somebody is all D and nothing else. And the reality is that we're all a mixture of the four letters. So anyway, somebody that's high D is going to come across as cool, aloof, probably even cold at times, pretty much dominated by the thinking function. High Ds with nothing else going on, not huggers, not even really much patience for the feelings of others. And these people work very quickly, have good administrative skills. Our last president was a very high D. And I'll get into one other letter that he had a good amount of, which might surprise some people, but he did have he had a decent amount of. But anyway, so much of his, both like in the 2016 campaign, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were high D personalities, and you saw it. People just consider part of it had to do with what party you belong to, but pretty much, people consider them to be fairly abrasive people. So that's kind of what high D looks like. Just very matter of fact, get down to business. You know what? You're not going to find me in a Mr. Rogers sweater hugging everybody. So if we look at the words that would apply, we would say argumentative, daring, demanding, decisive, domineering, egocentric. And that's at the extreme D. And I'm just trying to bracket this for you. So that's the extreme. And then the low D, a person who we would actually call agreeable. So an agreeable person, cautious, conservative, contemplative, modest, restrained. And this matters just because it has to do with what job you want someone to do. And you don't send a low D person in to do a difficult task. You send disagreeable people to do disagreeable jobs. And so the prototype, almost any time that you see a highly successful entrepreneur or CEO, you're dealing with at least one of their four letters being high, a D being high among their four letters. It could be other ones too. But, you look at Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all those people, high D, high dominance people. All right, so the next letter is I. That's for influence. And I's like spontaneous action and decision, like involvement. Really don't like being alone. High I's, like if you're all I, being alone with no one to interact with is just the epitome of pain, of punishment. High I's tend to exaggerate, generalize. So as I use that word, you can tell I'm like, so the other, so the other thing that President Trump is fairly high in is also in influence. In fact, students of influence consider him to be one of the all-time masters of the game of influence, for what that's worth. And that's not a political endorsement or anything. I'm just saying that guy has those chops. All right. So high I's tend to dream and get others caught up in their dreams. Jump from one activity to another. A very high I is probably more likely than any other type to be labeled ADD. Which is a term I absolutely hate, but everybody kind of thinks they know what they mean, so I use it from time to time. Works quickly and excitedly with others, seeks esteem and acknowledgement, has excellent persuasive skills. And the words we would use with a high I person: emotional, enthusiastic, gregarious, impulsive, optimistic, persuasive. I mean, these are a lot of stand-up comedians are high I and little else. A lot of just marketers and I don't want to say marketers because there's other stuff going on with marketers, but just the people who can just spontaneously act, are usually of good humor. That's probably a high I person. What we would say they're not is introspective, pessimistic, quiet, pensive, reticent, suspicious. And so we can see that those are kind of the opposite things, and those words don't really cause inspiration from into others. All right, so that is high I, and then high S, steadiness. So high steadiness people are, excuse me, slow to take action and in making decisions. They have their processing time. So, excuse me, steadiness also equates to process. People who can execute process regularly without really a temptation to deviate, like that person who can show up and just do the same job every day, day in and day out, that's a high S person. And so the slowness in taking action or making decisions is because that repetition is comfortable and familiar. High steadiness person typically likes close personal relationships, really dislikes interpersonal conflict. These are the people. So someone, again, is just high S, nothing else. I don't know why my voice has decided to abandon me, but it has. So a high I person will literally get up and leave the room if like there's heated debate, or even if there's something on TV that's unpleasant. It's that upsetting. And so very, very much cherishes interpersonal harmony, supports and actively listens to others, weak on goal setting and self-direction. And so there's a natural energy between a high D and a high S, because the high D loves to tell people what to do. And the high S is pretty much a team player and will play along. So they also have a great, because of this kind of innate nature, they have a natural ability to gain support from others and to build teams. A lot of coaches are high S's. Um, so they are seeking pretty much security and belongingness. That again, these are the people that will just take a paycheck year in and year out for a job that it doesn't even. Sometimes I think it doesn't even really register on whether or not to like the job. It's just that this is a consistent thing, and this is putting food on the table, and this works. And so, just a side note to throw, I'm trying to keep this simple, just focused on one letter at a time, but for some reason I can't stop from doing that. So, people who are high influence and high steadiness are typically very good at counseling, at being counselors. So, words that we would attribute to a high S person would be calming, loyal, patient, peaceful, serene, team person. I guess I already mentioned, but that's one. And then what we would say they would typically not be is active. Now, active, when we say active, it's not that they don't, they run, do sports or whatever like that, but they're not frenetic. They're not a random body in motion. Um, they're they're not change oriented. I should say, when the antithesis, I'm saying this incorrectly. The antithesis of the words that we would apply, that we'd say a steady person is not, is active, change oriented, fault finding, impatient, restless, spontaneous. And again, it's that person who can show up and do that repetitious job every day and just be perfectly fine. Just enjoy it. And that feature, a high S, is a combined with the next one I'm going to share, which is conscientiousness. High S, high C. That's a very employable combination. That's a diligent, hardworking worker who can be relied upon. So that brings us to that last letter, C, conscientiousness. And we would say that the high C people are typically cautious about actions and decisions, very much organized and likes structure. Not necessarily the person who's going to get involved in just a bunch of social stuff. High C will typically be that person who is all work and no play, or even at home or wherever they are. There's work to be done and there are tasks to be completed. And so this conscientiousness, like all the other things, but they permeate the being. And so, we would say that they prefer objective, task-oriented, intellectual work environment. And so that task-oriented is another important thing, because if you're a high C, nothing else, you're probably that person that really doesn't want to sit through a bunch of strategy meetings or just things that deal with abstract topics. You're going to be that person who wants to just be, here are the things we need to get done today, and they're going to go bang them out and get them done. So, one thing is we would say overly reliant on data collection, and sometimes can lose the forest for the trees, but to focus on the trees. Sometimes I get that one backwards. But typically also works pretty slowly, but very deliberately, very carefully, very precisely. And you give them a problem to solve, they're going to solve the problem. It may not be lickety split lightning. Oh, here's the intuitive insight. That's not going to happen. But there will be a dedication to getting the job done and to getting completion that a high C person will bring to the table. So words we would attribute to them would be accurate, conservative, exacting, fact-finding, precise, systematic. And what we would say is the antithesis of someone is the antithesis of a high C person, so a low C person, we would say is like arbitrary, defiant, fearless, obstinate, rebellious, sarcastic. And so those are just, those are the rebellious, you can just see in those words, those are the rebellious ones. They're not the rule followers. And so high C's are typically good rule followers. And, the prototypical high C person would be an accountant, and not an Enron accountant, a diligent, honest accountant. So that is the overview on the on the 4 letters and just giving you some of the characteristics. It's just a piece of the puzzle. If you would like to learn more and see how this applies to you, please click on the link that will be underneath this video that will bring you to my website and help you see the way that I could help you in clarifying those things. That's what I've got, and I will see you tomorrow when I talk about the strengths of the different styles. All right, take care. All right, YouTube, I'll see you later. Take care.